LibertyRevoltMedia.com.
Hey guys, this is Spike Cohen. The Liberty Revolt is founded on strategies to engage in the culture war and to protect the principles of individual liberty, private property, and limited government by developing a better understanding of history, political philosophy, as well as policies and their ramifications. Thanks for joining, and remember, you are the power.
What's up, guys? How you doing? Hope you like the new intro. Bucky Dillon, joined by our co-patriot, Kevin. What's up, man? How you doing today? What's up, man? How you doing today?
You muted me, so it's a rough one. Watching Afghanistan fall, so it's been a fun
Afghanistan falls. Yeah, that's an interesting one that I'd like to hop into as soon as possible. But first, guys, if you're watching, in the comment section, let us know who you are, how long you've been following the Liberty Revolt, and what's going on in your worlds, what's on your mind. This is titled A Community Chat for a reason. We are here to talk with you guys. We have a special guest who's going to be coming on shortly. Cole Masters is going to be joining us as well. And I'm ecstatic to announce Liberty Revolt CBD is here, boys and girls, ladies and gents, boys and gals, non-binary pals. Go to libertyrevoltmedia.com. Check out the shop section. Not today, but in a few days. So, what's news?
Saigon is happening again. That's the news.
Yeah.
We're seeing.
What are your thoughts on it?
It's a hard one because as much, obviously, I wanted our troops out of Afghanistan, but there are ways to withdraw that don't
set the precedent for an even larger war coming right down the pipe.
That don't just play directly into the Taliban's hands. I mean, you had people within the intelligence community of the United States saying it would be 30 to 90 days before it was even conceivable of an assault on Kabul, let alone anywhere else. And days like a day into this, and they're already taking Kabul.
It was closer to 30 hours.
Yeah, and so it's, it was. I understand wanting to get out. Obviously, I wanted to get out. I've been screaming for us to get out, but there are ways to get out where you don't leave behind billions of dollars in technology.
A lot of that technology was left in the hands of the Afghan army, which was, pretty quickly surrendering and giving up all of their equipment.
Yeah, and the troops should have been the last people out of that place. The last Americans to leave should have been the troops. The contractors and the people working in the embassy, people working on the ground and stuff like that. All the civilians that are over there should have been priority one. Get them the hell out. But again, the Biden administration just seems to be incapable of handling a problem before them effectively. It's like getting to the right answer in math, but using the entirely wrong equation and only happening to getting there by accident. We've lost billions. Is Siri there? Is Siri there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Didn't see your video there. Hello and welcome. How's it going, man?
Oh, pretty good. Enjoying this nice, 75 degree, 80 degree evening here. No wind, so it's nice. So I'm outside.
It is definitely not a bad night tonight here, but
yeah.
it's the, the biggest thing that we're looking at is that a lot of soldiers right now definitely feel like, not just soldiers. I say soldiers to mean everyone in the military, but it's basically a lot of military personnel right now are wondering what the hell the last 20 years have been for. What the hell their friends died for? What did they get blown up for? What did they sacrifice? What did they go overseas, sacrifice 9 to 15 months of their life for? Was there anything worth it? What was the whole point of all this? Is kind of
not just our veterans and our personnel, but also our allies are wondering, why should we trust the U.S.? The way I see it, it's almost as if this whole thing. Now, I'm going to sound conspiratorial, and just as a disclaimer, guys, I'm looking at the world through a keyhole. Don't take what I say as cold, hard fact. Do your own research, come up with your own opinion. But this is kind of the from what I've gathered and heard, this is what my gut instinct tells me. It seems as though this is possibly setting us up for another large-scale war, because it takes two to end an endless war, right? It's just coming home and surrendering territory to groups that actively want to destroy you, doesn't seem to be accomplishing the goal. We have a lot of people who have been using emotional slogans to drive foreign policy, such as, bring the troops home and no more endless wars. And, that sounds really nice. It's like being anti-poverty, right? Anyone with decent sensibilities is going to be anti-war, right? And obviously there is a military industrial complex. There is very lucrative financing deals and military infrastructure contracts that are always going to try to push everlasting war because it makes them rich. And we should definitely be hypercritical and aware of these things. But I also think that we live in a real world where, as far back as humans have ever existed on this little planet I like to call Earth, there has been war and conquest forever. Before oil, before steel, before banking and finance, human beings have been engaging in war, and there are evil regimes out there who are seeking to tyrannize not only people in their own country, but who are actively seeking to destroy countries around them and even destroy Western civilization, Renaissance, Enlightenment, and the whole concept of freedom, human rights, and representative government. And there's a difference between going to war, nation building, and trying to maintain a security contingency. And that's what we had in Afghanistan, was a security contingency. There hasn't been a U.S. casualty there in 18 months.
Oh my God, you're not the one over there. I don't want to hear it. Using the fact that no one's died as an excuse that, oh, sorry, my own desires didn't get anyone killed in the last year. No, that's not a valid excuse. It's not okay.
We have more troops in Germany, right? Yeah. But you know what? I am a father, and when I see little girls that look like my daughter dragged out of schools, turned into sex slaves, and had acid thrown in their face, it gets me pretty pissed off.
I'm sure it does, yes, and it should. But at the same time, unless you're going to be the one volunteering to go over there and fight it, I don't want to hear it out of you that we should be keeping people over there.
So what is your position then? Is that you don't think that the U.S. military should have a presence over there right now?
No, absolutely not. The U.S. military has a presence all over the entire world, and all it ever does is lead to more conflict. The whole reason we're in Afghanistan now is because we decided to intervene in their
conflict.
Well, no. So my question.
For a much larger conflict, a much bloodier and expensive.
That's a direct result of our intervention.
Right, but when you say that, that's also like a negative caveat to take the last 20 years, the blood, sweat, and tears, and life lost over the last 20 years, and then to walk away from it. Like right now, you took the gas and threw it on a fire, and gave them the matches to go and ignite it. And now we're in a position of we are directly responsible for the fallout that is ensuing right now.
No, we're not. They had a military that we stood up. It's not our fault that the Afghan military has.
It's not about blame. It's not about blame.
It is partially our fault because we've been training them for 20 years.
We cannot fight these battles for them.
Be dependent on much of our logistics.
Force them to take our values. We cannot force them to adopt our culture.
We can stop them from being a terrorist hotbed.
No, you can't.
I mean that in the sense of infrastructure. You're talking about demilitarization, and
Mhm.
you're forgetting about the prevailing infrastructure that governs the entire body.
Yeah.
Like we were, the whole point of what we were doing there in the first place was to reinforce, rebuild, and to help democratize a place that's resistance upon based on some biblical belief, or Islam. And it's not a trash or anything against that.
Yeah.
And that's what we're fighting. We're fighting their traditional mindset, but at the same time, we are responsible for the last 20 years of that chaos. Yes,
we are
we
not
inserted
responsible.
ourselves. How are we not
we're
responsible?
We're not responsible for the last 20 years. We're responsible for the last about 50 years of chaos in that country.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a different,
that's-
financial interest.
But that's
and,
the point.
Right.
When you look
but
at
you
Iran
can't walk away
next
from it
door-
blindly.
No, you can't. You cannot. The withdrawal was piss poor. The withdrawal was not done right. It should have been done much better. The troops, like I said, should have been the last people out of that place, following our personnel. But if the Afghan military people, if the military representing the people of Afghanistan cannot defend it from its own people, from the Taliban, that's not on us. We have spent billions of dollars training them up, giving them equipment, doing everything we could. And then when we handed them the keys to the car, they didn't know how to drive. We had been
Yeah, we
told
also
how to
gave
drive.
billions of dollars
training that was dependent on them having us backing them, and we just pulled the rug out from under them.
We did not pull the rug out from under them. We have been training that military for nigh on 20 years.
To work in coordination with us.
No, to work in coordination with themselves. They have to be able to do it themselves. It's not, we cannot fix the fact that every member of their military basically threw their guns down. We cannot fix the fact that everybody in their police department is corrupt. That is on them. They have to do it. The same way we talk about the biggest problem in America is that our communities have failed and we need to rebuild our communities. That's the same thing they need to do. Afghanistan is never going to be fixed until the people of Afghanistan want to fix it. And that is why I want to make sure every one of my friends that was in the military with me understands that what you did over there had a purpose. You gave the people a taste of freedom. You planted that seed of freedom in their gardens. The problem is they have to be the ones that water it and take care of it. We are not going to be the ones that sit in its shade. But if they want to be the ones that sit in its shade, they have to be the ones that are watering it. We can't sit around and water it until it grows.
It's
Right,
not
but
like-
isn't the
it's not like
proverbial
there's not going to
expression?
be interference immediately as soon as we announced that we were pulling out? China and other countries started funding
Okay. Oh,
these groups to be essentially another proxy for Western antagonization, just like what North Korea.
We had the biggest empire. Britain had the biggest empire in the world. Rome had the biggest empire in the world. Everybody had the biggest empire in the world, and every single empire that fell at the point at which they had the biggest empire they had. When China stretches itself so thin that it's covering all these countries, they're going to fall apart, just like every single person.
No, they have the
single
population to
government
back
that
it. That's not even a fair comparison between the two. Like
does it. They do not have
comparing.
the population to back it.
And,
You don't
and
think so?
economies and
No.
technologies are globalized in a way that they never were. We can't compare the British Empire to what is going on in the world today.
They literally are the ones that globalize the entire economy. When they said the sun never set on the British Empire, they purely meant because the Britain had land in every single time zone.
Yeah, it also took them months to cross the ocean. Now it's
Yes.
like 12 hours.
I know, but here's the thing: is when you stretch yourself thin, when you stretch your resources thin, and you try because here's the other problem: China is not respecting the cultures where they go in. They're going to expect a lot of acquiescence, and that's going to create problems. They're colonizing. Colonizing never works. It never lasts very long because at the end of the day, the culture of the people you're trying to colonize is almost guaranteed to be vastly different than your own and is going to create such big problems down the line. It's untenable. You cannot spread your government into all the facets of spread it to a bunch of different cultures and peoples that have no desire to take it on and expect it to last. No, they're going to
there's a
spread out and they're going to
difference
fail.
between
That's what
forcing
happens every time.
democracies, nation building, and a security contingent. We had more
Maybe-
troops in Germany.
Yeah, maybe if we didn't put troops in, everybody's first taste of America wasn't the violence we bring with us everywhere we go. They'd be more willing to do a little bit more trade with us than China. But the problem is that everywhere China's going, they can say, yeah, we don't want America anywhere near us. We don't like America. Like, that's the problem. So because of our actions of the last century, since World War I, since Woodrow Wilson decided we were going to basically become one of the imperialist countries in the world, we have been creating these problems. Basically, all the problems we have today can be directly traced back to actions at the beginning of the 19th century or the 1900s on our government.
So a question to you then would how would you go about not reenacting Saigon in its entirety. Because you're about 50% there.
I mean, just make sure the troops stay behind, and just on your way out, absolutely batter the hell out of the Taliban. Our single biggest offensive of the last 5 years should have been the week before we were leaving that country.
But you still agree with the sense that you have military presence there and defending themselves against the Taliban.
Yeah, up until the point that all of our personnel are out of there, all the civilian personnel is out, and then we leave and let it fall. Who cares? At this point, I don't care. This is for the Afghan people to decide for themselves. If they don't like the Taliban's rule, it is on them to fight back. Okay, like I'm tired of just because our revolution worked and we fought back doesn't mean we can make other people fight back. Doesn't mean we can fill other countries with this. When you have Hong Kong, I would rather be in Hong Kong than Afghanistan. I'd rather be in Taiwan than Afghanistan. But we were in Afghanistan where they don't want us. Hong Kong's the place. Hong Kong and Cuba, they're waving our flags in the streets, shouting freedom. But in Afghanistan, there's a reason why the Taliban are taking over everywhere, because it's outside of basically those major metropolitan areas. They don't like us at all. Not in the slightest. They have a lot of support in that country against the Americans, and that's the problem. So until the hatred of the Taliban is significantly larger than the hatred of America, nothing's going to change in that country.
I think what's happening right now, and I agree. I do believe that there are legitimate reasons to be skeptical of the auspices under which we came to this reality. Absolutely, and there's plenty of regret and shame to be doled out among politicians and military contractors. We shouldn't be living in this mess, but we shouldn't be living in a fantasy where we think that by pulling out under these circumstances that we're not just setting the stage for a much larger conflict that's going to immediately drag us back in. Except for this time, we'll have no bases. We'll have all of our allies will have been hunted down and murdered, and none of our allies will take our word for it anyways. I mean, let me ask you this. Any country in the world right now, I would say if you had to choose between making a deal with the U.S. and making a deal with China, make a deal with China, because the U.S. is going to change their mind in 4 years.
No, it's asinine.
The U.S. is going to
that's a CNN way of putting it to get pressure on the talking points I want. Everyone knows America more than China, especially on the global stage. The problem that we're facing is, I just have one question: do you think China is going to be able to do what the United States at their height of their power couldn't do, what the USSR at the height of their power couldn't do, what Britain at the height of their power couldn't do, what France at the height of their power couldn't do, what everyone who has ever attempted to go into that country and take it over has tried to do? No,
I don't think they're going to take it over. I think they're going to find a terrible regime with no regard to the people at all whatsoever, and they're going to use that regime the same way they use North Korea to be an antagonist towards the West.
Because let me remind you that China currently is torturing Muslims, and if you're unaware, the Taliban hate people that kill Muslims. All right, there's a lot of people in the Taliban that are not really aware of what's happening to the Uyghur Muslims. As soon as that starts actually becoming well known, there's going to be a lot of hatred towards China in Afghanistan, because Muslims hate Muslims being killed, especially by non-Muslims, but even more by Muslims. So there's going to be a lot of animosity there. China is not going to be able to put upon the people the culture they want to put upon the people, and it's going to lead to problems. China's going to try to do the same thing we did, right?
They're going to treat them the way they do North Korea. They're going to prop them up as long as they are acting as a terrorist hotbed against the West.
The problem is that Afghanistan, the Taliban has a different ideological conviction behind what they do than North Korea. And that difference in ideological conviction, the fact that it's based actually on an actual religion with actual, that has an actual what's the word I'm looking for? That has an actual set of beliefs and values and everything that goes behind it, is going to present a much different problem. There's a reason why China works so hard to kill the Muslims in their own country. It's because any kind of ideological bend against this, and they're done. And China's also going to run into problems in that a lot of the countries they're moving into, the source of the labor they're using is not the locals, it's Chinese imports. Imagine how this is going to cause so many problems. They're just doing to Africa what the West did to Africa in the late 1800s, early 1900s. All right, but
Africa still accepts their present. They're not shying away from the money involvement or anything else.
No.
And I think that if financially, if they can start making strides to expand their agenda, and they have financial backing to do so, you don't think that China would have success there, regardless of what's going on by the Uyghurs?
I don't. I think that it's to believe that that China is not going to run into the exact same issues every single empire has ever run into is just beyond it. No, it's. If you want to be honest, countries aren't going to reject China until they learn how much it destroys their countries. Like, we keep looking on this from a very myopic lens. We're only caring about the next 5 to 10 years, our lifetime. This is stuff that's going to be 500, 1,000 years from now, stuff that's going to shape the earth. And what's going to happen, what it's going to be 1,000 years from now, is this is going to be the telling of the story of how China expanded to the point of collapse. Because at the same time China's trying to expand, their population is shrinking dramatically to the point where it's going to be well under 1 billion within the next 30 years. They do not have the capability to maintain the expansion that they're going for. Huh?
They're not repopulating at a level of replacement, not even close.
No, they're not. The one-child policy decimated their repopulation, their population numbers, and its effects won't be felt until 25 to 50 years afterwards, after the one-child policy went into effect. But it's going to remain the same. Their population is going to diminish. This is the same thing. This is the same mistake every single empire makes ever. They expand to the point where they cannot maintain it, because at the end of the day, the biggest problem every empire is ever going to run into is whatever country you're going into, their culture and their values are going to be different. And at first it's going to go swimmingly, but as soon as the cracks start showing, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. These countries are not going to like the fact that China is going to be imposing their will upon them, their values upon them, the Chinese culture upon them. They're going to be importing Chinese people to take over their countries. And China's going to be fighting these wars in the next 30 to 40 years, man. China's going to be fighting wars all over the country, all over the world, if they keep this up, because people aren't going to like an authoritarian, totalitarian regime coming in and dictating the entirety of their policy, much like we did.
I think we agree on a couple points. I think we agree on the futility of trying to and even counterproductivity of nation building in countries that are ideologically opposed to us, especially if you're doing it forcefully. And I also think that we agree that we don't want to have a hot war just going on and on and on in this area. We don't want to be empowering the military financiers that are pushing us for perpetual war. I do think the pullout was absolutely the worst possible way to go about doing so. And I think the way they're going about doing so is almost seems designed to get us into a much worse conflict.
And we have to resist down the road. We have to resist that. That's the problem. Is this is a chance for America
it takes two parties to end the war.
Really announce to the world that we are returning to the values of America, which is, hey, look, we trade with you. If you attack us, we destroy you. If you don't attack us, we don't harm you. Trade with us. And that's how you bring peace. Because at the end of the day, you want to know how you win Africa over? Be a better trade partner. Provide them more prosperity than the Chinese will. And you do that by trade with America. Means you don't have to import all your labor from America in order to be successful. We can actually do that with the African people. There's a reason why like 12 of the top 15 growing economies on planet Earth are in Africa, and they're not the economies that are being rebuilt by China. They're economies that are being directly rebuilt by Europe. Europe is actually making a very concerted effort to build up Africa at the same time China is, and a lot of African countries are way more receptive of the Europeans because the way the Europeans are doing it now is more capitalist. They send top tier like engineers and stuff in to help build up the corporation in these countries like Cote d'Ivoire, like the Western Saharan area. Like there's a lot of work being done in these countries based on trade that does not involve importing of the labor from outside. Whereas what China is doing is incredibly reminiscent of what the Europeans did in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Just right now, it's not involving as much violence.
Well, I also think there are human human abuses that become so egregious at some point somebody needs to step in. If my neighbor is raping a 12-year-old girl every night,
kill 'em.
me trading with them is not a reasonable way.
Well, we're not going to use false
At some point, we need to do
equivalencies in this. There's a difference between your neighbor next door and a country overseas. That's where there's different people, different values.
Yeah, for the first time in Afghanistan's history, 50% of girls were in school. They were getting jobs, not just in the private market,
For the
but
first
in
time
government.
ever.
And
Yep.
overnight, women are seeing all of their rights stripped away.
Do you think they're going to forget what it was like to have that freedom? Do you think they're going to forget what it was like to be treated almost as close to an equal as they've ever been treated? Do you think they're going to forget how great it was and how much better it was? Do you think the men are going to forget these things? Like, they aren't going to forget these tastes of freedom. The only thing you can hope for is that it's enough to fuel them to fight their own battles, to have their own revolution against
Which
the Taliban.
is what a contingent security force was intended to do.
Really, look, man, when we fought our revolution, we didn't use the help of the British. We didn't get the help of the French until we were already balls deep and had already proven it. How about when the Afghan people are already balls deep in their own war, where they're clearly
we also had all the history and military logistics knowledge of the British Empire. This is a country that doesn't have the complex military logistics until we came in and started training their forces, and it takes a long time.
Yeah. So now we're nation building. That's not our job.
We weren't
So
nation building.
What's
We
the
had a-
take
we
on
had a
this?
Just
security-
described as
Dylan-
nation building.
Dylan, you don't like it that we left. You do like it that we left, man. Come on, bring me into the fold so I can,
That's pretty much
Give
the
my-
gist of it.
terrible takes. That's the
well,
gist of it?
No, I think we would both like to see a world where we are not so heavily involved, and I think we both disagree with the way that we are approaching that. I think our biggest thing is we both think that there's a better way that could have gone about this that would have protected both the interests of the Afghan people and the interests of security around the world without handing Afghanistan essentially over to a terrorist regime backed by the Chinese.
Yeah, but I mean, we would have to be there for 100 freaking years,
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah, no, and so that's not an option. Again,
I think this is a recipe for a much more disastrous and expensive hot war in like a year.
Maybe
Hot
we
war
should have
would
fought
be-
a hotter war to begin with instead of just freaking nation building.
that's
You
the
know,
whole
because
point.
these
Like
guys were
Casey
pathetic.
says.
The forces, they've been pathetic ever since the beginning. Even in 2010, we had reports that no matter when we go, we were lied to. They said, oh, yeah, we got it. No, this is great. This is fine. Give us another $1 trillion. And, we did, and we flushed it down the toilet instead of really just destroying these guys ourselves and forgetting about the Afghan coalition government that did nothing but grift the money to begin with. I mean, they weren't even a government, to be real.
The Afghan army was 300,000 people strong, and it couldn't stop the Taliban. That's
They
on
didn't even
them.
have that many. They were lying about how many they had. They put a shit ton of soldiers on the roll call so they could pay them salaries that they were actually
ghost
paying in
soldiers.
their own pockets.
Yeah, the Ghost Soldiers was really bad, but it's not half their military, so they had at least 150,000.
Yeah, which is
Should be enough.
It should be enough.
Gotta be enough.
Absolutely. But I mean, these are people who didn't care. These guys were there for a paycheck, right?
Yeah,
These
yeah.
Afghanis that we had in the armies, they had no loyalty. It's still a tribal country for the most part. I mean, there's a reason we call Afghanistan the graveyard of empires. It's because every little pocket is different. It's super mountainous. It's super hard to control. Every little piece of this country is a shit show.
That's what I was saying. I was like, what do you really think China moving in is not going to lead to the exact same thing that has happened to every single country that has ever gone in there? Let
We should
China
hope
go
that
in.
China goes in.
Like, 'cause
Yeah, Kevin,
it's gonna seem peaceful at first, but again, China is an authoritarian regime. They're gonna butt heads tremendously with the Taliban.
Dude, the Taliban know about the Uyghur camps. I mean, they're not completely stupid, right? Obviously, they just took Kabul. I mean, they're not dumb. They know what's going on. It's not like they're like, oh, we love the Chinese. They're going to use the Chinese as much as they can, and then who knows?
That was a walkthrough. That wasn't even a battle of Kabul. They walked
there's
through
no
it in less than
surrender.
24 hours.
Yeah.
There was nothing. So, I mean, even that's just to say that they have enough intelligence to walk in and take a city that wasn't defending itself isn't really an accomplishment. The president bailed and went, left the country. his subordinate made a vow to stand there and help with the peaceful transition of power, they surrendered. And it was because they didn't want to destroy the city that they were occupying. All the people, regardless of if the people didn't want to stand up and fight for themselves, it's not saying shame on them. The government failed, and so did the backing of all of the allies that were present there. And I think the pullout was premature, and it wasn't done properly. And I do think that we should maintain a military presence there until we can walk away from it hands-free. And then in a situation, they bailed. And we left them with weapons. Like
we can maintain air superiority over there. The thing is like, here's my plan is, why don't we offer Afghanistan loans so that they can pay contractors to come over there for them, like they out of their pocket rather than our pocket. They can pay our contractors to come back and provide these services if they want them, and the contractors can decide if they're going to go over there. And
how do you get that back now? The issue that we have now is that
we have air superiority. No, we have air
so you're going to have to go in and start. You're going to have to go in and start bombing to make a point.
Well, and then no boot on the ground. I would say that if you want to do that, like there's an argument to be made that give them a loan that they can then use to pay contractors to come back if they want to. But
you're talking about the former regime.
Yeah, the former. What should have happened is they should have been allowed to keep contractors if the contractors, because a lot of the conflict that's going on is being fought being fought by contractors. Very little is being done. Yeah, very little is being done by the American forces. So why not allow them the way to pay people, pay American mercenaries to come in and protect your shit if you can't do it yourself. But at the end of the day, it should not be the American military. That is not the American military's job. If someone wants to voluntarily get paid $150K to go over to Afghanistan and hang out and protect them, go for it. But that's not the American military's job.
Yeah, but the world optics now are even far worse than they were 20 years ago with U.S. Air Force warships taking off and people falling off of the plane, flooding the international airport there and stuff. So now you have damage control that's outside that scope. You have no way to get that former body or governing body back in place to employ contractors.
Yep. No, I know. And that's it's too late now. Our withdrawal was incredibly sloppy, right? But what we have to realize is what this shows us is that this was always going to have to happen. So what's going to happen now is the military fell. It was filled with cowards. The people that are going to step up next are going to be the ones that are fighting to get that freedom back. And without that, if nothing we would have done mattered. What had to happen was they had to get a taste of it before they knew to fight for it. And so now that they've had that taste, they were the freest they've ever been. It is much more likely moving forward that the Taliban is going to face incredibly heavy resistance from the people, because they're going to have much worse lives. And the Taliban is either going to have to adapt and either take on the role of being a governing body, at which point they have to actually legitimately start doing some things that'll maintain at least, a tacit level of consent from the people. Like, a majority of people will be at least be like, well, you know what, at least I'm not going to get killed today, right? But we were never going to be able to just go in and force them on it. It had to, you don't know what you have until you lost it. And now that they've lost it, this better be the impetus for them to try to fight for it and get it back. Because otherwise everything we did was not worth it.
Well, I'm calling it. I think we're going to be back in there harder than we have, and
I don't doubt it.
Years and years. In no time, I think that the way we pulled out completely demoralized our allies in Afghanistan, completely demoralized our allies around the world, did devastating harm, particularly to the women and girls in that country, and I think gave a foothold to some pretty nasty characters. And I wish things could be different. Are you guys ready to move on to a different conversation, or do you want to keep going in circles?
Last thoughts. I just came in. I think this war of all wars is what really shows the absolute worst parts of the American military-industrial complex. And I did not used to understand the term military-industrial complex until looking at what happened here in Afghanistan and all the freaking money being funneled into the troops who had to say, oh, we have to spend $3 million in this village today. What are we going to do? Like, they were just squandering money again and again and again on credit. Generals were lying. Afghan government officials were buying houses in Doha and in Switzerland and in Britain. And I mean, people were grifting this war so hard. I would much rather just have had a hot freaking war where there are boots on the ground for a reason, not to grow poppies and feed the freaking military industrial complex, but to get over there and kill some freaking Taliban. That's it. Yeah. Bomb these guys, shoot these guys, freaking take them down.
I think the military industrial complex is behind this withdrawal.
Probably.
I think this is setting the stage perfectly for them. I think they know exactly what's going to happen. They'll pull out, Taliban will move in, it'll start slaughtering people, and then we'll get dragged back into it.
That's already happening.
Twice as much money.
They're literally
many people.
I was listening to Ben Shapiro this morning, and the dude's already gotten like his war hawk hat on. So I'm just like, Jesus, it's.
I don't want to go back in. We should not be back in there. Let them do it. This is the moment where we, as America, say no. These are our values. We are no longer the world's police. We are no longer the world's. We are no longer the world's nation builders. We're not nation builders. We shouldn't be nation builders. But you know, I'm okay with a little world policing. I'm okay with a little bit of that. I'm all right with a little. If we do it right, though. But this proves that we can't do it right.
Doing the policing. You're not okay doing the policing.
Am I not, Kevin? If we went to war with a certain country that shall not be named, in this stream,
we've been at war in Afghanistan.
On the force. I will be on the front lines. I tell you guys that much.
We've been at war with 2 different countries for the last 20 years. Now 4 actually, if you want to count, Yemen, and 5 if you want to count Yemen, Djibouti, Somalia. Libya,
all over the place.
Yeah, no. So we've been fighting these wars. That's what I'm saying is like,
and just so you guys know, I did volunteer for the military. In fact, here's a gigantic piece I wrote on my reasons for joining the Navy. Here are the jobs I was interested in. I got the Sailor's Creed. I've got everything. I got the list of what all the ranks were, everything, man. I was so amped up and ready to go, man. I was running, I was doing push-ups, I was studying, and it turns out I got in too much trouble when I was a young guy.
I mean, we should want troublemakers over in places like that. We need people willing to take risks. And I don't care. Getting in legal trouble at least shows that you're willing to take a few risks. Certain legal trouble.
It used to be that a prison that having some kind of legal fuck-ups in your history was actually a reason why you would end up in the military.
It was a pipeline to the military. Like, what is happening? Why are we such freaking pussies here? I don't get it. Like, if these felons who have been in freaking prison for 10 years running around in gangs want to join the military, that's the guy I'd want on the front lines, right? More than like Tommy Blue Boy, khaki pants, golf on the weekends, never fucking taken a hit of weed in his life. I mean, that's my take.
No, but there is something to be said for the fact that a lot of people who are saying we should have stayed over there are people that never actually even attempted to back it up with their words or with their actions at all. It's like that's the whole problem. That's the whole point. When you're saying we need to send the military over there, what you're saying is I want to send people's children over there to fight this battle in my stead.
If you're a hawk, you have to be ready to go
I'm
in.
Not a hawk. Exactly. Now, if someone is directly attacking the United States, I'm of a different mind. I'm all for self-defense, but this is not self-defense. This has not been self-defense. Self-defense was over when we toppled that entire government within like weeks of going in there. Self-defense was when we, destroyed Saddam Hussein like immediately after going in there. We should have both of those conflicts.
There are a tremendous level of veterans who are sad to see how this is playing, and do feel that we could have kept a security contingency there. And their argument would be that the fact that there hasn't been terrorist attacks is why they went there.
What? What's this?
Where are the main terrorist cells in this world? They're all over Egypt. They're all over Europe and Africa, man. Like our presence in Afghanistan is not changing terrorist attacks. ISIS is not in Afghanistan. All right, ISIS.
The Taliban and ISIS are enemies. They
Yeah,
don't like
like
each other.
this idea that the Taliban haven't been
Sorry,
responsible.
I'm
for
sure the Taliban have. I'm
what
sure the
happened?
Taliban have zero interest in pursuing aggression towards the United States.
No, but it's
I
a
don't think they
fallacy, it's a
do.
lie, and it's a misinformation. You know, our presence in Afghanistan is not why there haven't been terrorist attacks. It's the Patriot Act. If you really want to get it down into it, it's the fact that the government decided they were going to peek into every single electronic communication, basically, that goes around this world at this point. So, like, you know, the Patriot, like, it's not our presence in Afghanistan that's keeping the terrorists at bay. Like, our presence in Afghanistan didn't even get us Osama bin Laden. That was our presence in Pakistan that got us Osama bin Laden. It's, you know, we went in there because they were harboring, you know, Osama bin Laden was hiding in a cave, and the Taliban said okay, and then he wasn't in there anymore, and we still kept killing them all. And then we didn't go to any of the other countries because terrorism doesn't have a country, doesn't have an identity. It's an ideology that can be anywhere at any time. And so terrorist attacks are, you know, not coming from Afghanistan. There's a lot more active countries in this world that they're probably going to try to get us into. And here's the thing: if you allow a terrorist attack to happen to us, we are going to turn your entire country into glass and get out of there, and we're going to have no other regrets about it. Okay?
Or we're going to be in there for 20 years, and then we're going to pull out, and all of our citizens are going to go. Maybe
if you attack us, you have condemned your women and children to death. That's what it should be known as. If us attacking America kills my wife and kids, is it worth it at that point? No. If that was the thought process that had to go through their heads before they
you can say that's what should be, but if we're looking at what we've been doing my entire life, that is not what we've been doing.
No, and this is what I'm saying. This is the chance for America to reset and really announce what our values are. We are not the world's police force. We're not going to send our people off into wars. We're going to stick to our principles of free trade. And then, you know, we saunter off further into Ancapistan and have a free trading world. But
We just need to just keep controlling the oceans like we do. You know, we need to flex our might through the South China Sea like we do. We need to make it known that those semiconductors are ours. And that if anyone touches our semiconductors, they're going down.
I want my microchips back, please. Like, drop the price. All right. Are we?
So
I think we're good on.
You got a home gym behind you. You got a squat rack back there.
Oh, I sure do.
Do you curl in it or what?
Oh yeah, dude. I do everything, man. Squats, bench. Just throw up 435 on Saturday on the bench.
My God.
Jesus.
With no
Christ.
spotter.
On the bench?
And this
On
is why
bench,
you
no
just
spotter.
don't even try in the gym because like there's always something stronger.
That's why I work out at home, man. I don't want to sit there and worry about, you know, somebody else trying to flex while I'm working out. So,
Well, I'm headed over
Yo,
to work
you're
out
gonna
at your
scare
house.
people. You're just going to scare everyone off,
to work
man.
out at your house.
I'm just a little guy.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's a load of bullshit.
No, I'm a small
5'7"
375 pounds.
Yeah, that's it. You know, just 375, 363 right now. So, working on getting
Jesus.
smaller but getting bigger. You know.
That's what she's.
Man.
So, what news have you been following recently?
A little bit of everything.
Yeah, what's
Got
your take
into-
on with, critical race theory stuff?
I think that ironically tethered to the tribalism that we're discussing right now.
Yep.
I think that CRT itself is just another way for a body to create a negative talking point. I think CRT itself is just history. I think that if you allow CRT to be taught in a particular fashion, you're only feeding that. I don't know. I think you're creating the wrong idea with calling it a theory or instituting that theory. But to me, it's the same. If you're going to allow them to teach CRT in schools, then you should keep up the monuments. You know, because it's of historical value. Yes. Go get some. Sorry.
And
I know that it sounds a little bit crazy because when we first met, we talked about, you know, Juneteenth and all that. I think that it has historical value, and I think that it provides an explanation to why certain things happen the way they do. Why people believe that there's systemic racism. is because of CRT. Why me as a black man have been pulled over by police officers get treated differently with my friends present in the car. If you don't teach that, there's never a why. It just becomes, oh, they have a personal bias against me. So I do think it's necessary, but I don't know at what point. I'm on the phone. Sorry, my little one is like in my ear. So,
Okay.
But yeah, so I mean, I think CRT has a purpose. I just don't know where that, at what age it should be, or what age it's appropriate to start teaching that theory.
Here's the thing about CRT is that, you know, teaching anything related to critical theory to high schoolers is insanely hard because it's some of the headiest philosophy that you're ever going to find. And if you're looking at the actual, you know, critical theory part of critical race theory, then the premises that it's based upon at its very foundation are a little bit shaky and are definitely subject to question. And I think those are the premises we should be questioning. But I do think that systemic racism, you know, as a separate body from CRT, should be something that we talk about and should be something that we explore in depth, but, you know, not only through the American lens, I think through a human lens, right? Looking at every society and relationships and dynamics of power in general. And there's just so much you have to lump in there to contextualize these kinds of things. So drawing the line is important, but also letting kids know that, like, hey, this happened, this is happening, and it will continue to happen, and you need to know about it is incredibly important. I think just, you know, the critical theorists themselves are a little bit disconnected from the reality of people preaching this stuff on the ground.
Well, I just think that it's something that's being used to divide more than it is to help any kind of particular growth.
Right.
Yeah. And when you associate, like, when you say that they're two separate things, systemic racism and CRT, I don't think they are. I don't think that because I only look at CRT or the critical race theory as its historical value, it's just its focus, instead of it being about any other race other than black. That's why it's critical race theory, because it only focuses on either the negative tribulations associated with being black in America or overall, but CRT isn't a thing outside of America.
I think the issue here is you're conflating the idea of an interpretation of history with history itself. CRT is not history. It's using historical events to push forth a certain interpretation and narrative through history. So CRT is not teaching about the Tulsa race riots. That's history. CRT teaching about the Tulsa race riots is saying that, you know, is looking into the racial roots of it, which it has, and then continuing to apply that through today. Now, CRT is saying, you know, something happening today is exactly like the Tulsa race riots of 1920, because America is still just as racist now as it was then. It's not history. It's an interpretation of history. And because
it's promoting the history and then identifying particulars of the history and giving further explanation.
Depending on the race, it all depends on the race that's being discussed. It's all about making sure that the narrative you want is able to be seen through the historical significance. Critical race theory history is teaching that Thomas Jefferson owned slaves. Critical race theory is teaching that because Thomas Jefferson owned slaves, he's a horrible human being whose ideas and values have no merit whatsoever because he was a racist who owned slaves. That's critical race theory.
So that's why I said that it is a direct contributor to systemic racism. Yeah, you look at the same thing. We had our little chat with John Locke during the time of Enlightenment, or the Enlightenment era, and he owned slaves. Well, if you're writing laws and you own slaves, you automatically write laws with a bias. But that is not being discussed. That is not being taught. That is not something that is in your history books. And you learn that through CRT, which is why HBCUs exist. So it's the same thing. Like, whatever dog whistle or whatever direct line that you want to associate to making it a negative, because history is history, then that's what somebody does to create the argument or to have those talking points. Yeah. But CRT, is in my opinion, and what I've gathered from the little bit of research that I've been doing, is that it directly correlates with history. It's just like you said, you're focusing on one particular thing to push a particular agenda or whatever else. Yeah. But it gives further explanation.
Well, and that I want to push back just a little bit, maybe against both you guys here. Kevin, just as far as history is concerned, a particular interpretation of history above any college level is basically how history is taught, and I think understood in general. It's like history without contextualizing that into a broader arc itself. It's always how history has been done as a discipline. But I think the problem, with CRT is
you
that
have to understand its origins.
When you look at critical theory in general, it's basically saying that, well, race doesn't actually exist, but whiteness is racist.
Yeah. Well, you got to look at the origins, though, of critical race theory. It was specifically developed to be able to use any instance that is put before a lawyer to put before a defense attorney to be able to use racial inequality as a reason why the person they are defending should not be convicted of a crime. That is the whole point of critical race theory. It was developed to be a legal tactic in the legal theory field, or not the legal theory. It was developed by lawyers specifically because it's manipulative. It is intentionally manipulative. It is intentionally designed to be able to use historical events to develop a narrative that will get your client off with a crime. And from there, it was realized that if it can do that in a courtroom, guarantee you it can do that anywhere. And it has been applied thusly because critical theory is different from critical race theory in that obviously we know that critical race theory takes the critical theory approach of the truth you see is not the real truth, there is no real truth, and then goes, but the truth is racism. It makes race.
That's my problem with it. That is my problem with it. Yeah.
No, critical race.
But
theory
in principle, that's moral ambiguity. What you believe your personal truth to be.
Yeah.
No, you completely you know what I mean? Like it doesn't. You can say one particular thing. Well, I believe this to be true. Well, if I'm a continent of people who believe that murder, Hammurabi's code, an eye for an eye, and that's just how we operate. You kill mine, I kill yours. You take mine, I take yours.
Yeah.
It's a very archaic way of doing things.
And that's why it went away.
Obviously. But it's because justice as a whole is an agreed upon set of rules that we adhere to. Nothing more. Because what the larger body does, if they say this is justice, then the masses say that this is what justice is and we all follow suit. That is the moral ambiguity. Right?
See, and it's got to be ambiguous, but you have to use reason. And I think the thing that critical theory misses is that its very premises are flawed in saying that, racism is the most important thing that we need to look at, but there are no eternal truths. I mean, these are logical inconsistencies here. And my whole thing is that justice needs to be predicated not upon cultural values, but upon, reasoning, starting from premises of things that we find good, which this is where the value judgment comes in. You have to have a few value judgments for reasons, but extrapolating from that with things that we can use a chain of logic to dissect. And if there is a chink in your chain of logic, like there is in critical theory in general, then it's very hard to move forward with that. But I think we're all in agreement, Saray, that kids need to be apprised. They need to be made known that these things have happened, right? And I just think the theory itself, as a philosopher, I love philosophy, right? It grinds me the wrong way. Right, it's continental philosophy.
It's not a philosophical theory. It is an intentional tool of manipulation. The reason why they change definitions in critical race theory is because they know it is easy to manipulate. You manipulate the language, you manipulate the ideas. There's a reason why the 1619 Project doesn't focus on the fact that the first slave owner in America was black, or the fact that every slave that came to America's shores was put there by black people who went out and went into other tribes, kidnapped people and sold them to white slavers. Okay, like these facets of it. The idea is that the only people to blame for racism are white people. That is what critical race theory is based around. It's whatever group you are a part of. If it is not the dominant racial group in your society, you are the oppressed, and here are the tools that you need to get them to do what you want them to do. Critical race theory is not. It is not a philosophical idea. It is a direct tool of manipulation that was created by lawyers to win legal cases, and it's a natural
byproduct to institutions teaching that another race had a particular subset. They were subhuman, so it is a natural byproduct. It is directly created to combat that. And I understand. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say, let me put it this way. Critical race theory works for all races, including Native Americans, right? and we're told that slavery is evil. Why then am I always supposed to feel sad about hearing the Trail of Tears? But then when I found out they also had slaves with them, am I supposed to not care about the Trail of Tears, like the Indians on the Trail of Tears, because they own slaves? If I went through the same reasoning that is applied to white people that were guilty of slavery, then I should feel good that the Native Americans were actually on a Trail of Tears. They were slave owners. They deserved whatever pain they had coming to them. They were oppressors. Like, that is the problem with critical race theory, is that it intentionally teaches that there is always an oppressor-oppressee dynamic in every single relationship, and that is toxic, it is pernicious, it leads to nothing, and it is intentionally divisive to create narratives that can be built around race. Imagine if you are a critical race legal theorist defending a client, you just need one black person on a jury to get your client off with a crime. That's all you're going to need. And chances are, if you get a couple white college-educated liberals on there, you're going to win too, because all you have to do is start using the critical race theory tool you have to paint whatever racial injustice picture you need it to paint, because it gives you everything in its basket to be able to create this narrative. That's all it's there for. It is not a philosophical idea. Critical race theory is a tool built off of a philosophical idea.
Okay, I mean, I'm not disputing that. I'm not.
I do need
fully
to clarify.
versed in that history.
I agree that there is a significant importance in especially a lot of the topics they talk about, but critical race theory does it wrong. If you get what I'm saying, yes, everybody should know about the Tulsa race riots. Everybody should know about all these various injustices that have happened. But teaching it through the critical race theory lens is only going to create division, because that is what it's supposed to do.
Well, I mean, I just think it's doing its best to create the mindset at that time. So
I feel
the only
like I'm
way
really
you can.
defensive tonight. Sorry.
What's that?
I feel like I'm very defensive tonight. I'm aggressive tonight. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're not offending me at all. We're good.
I apologize.
No, you're good. I feel like if you can't teach the mindset of the people, or who reap the benefit of it, or the best you can, anyways. So,
Taliban says hi. Oh my god.
Hey guys!
Did you create a channel just to do that?
I did not do that. That just popped up organically. I would like to invite this person to come state their case.
No.
What does the Taliban think of critical race theory?
Okay, you asked that question.
What about critical gender theory? Because critical gender theory does the same exact thing.
My opinions on critical race theory. I think there is a legitimate role for teaching history. I think we do need to have an honest role. I think they get some things correct when they say that a lot of our history is filtered through the perspectives of those who had power, and it is important to try to look at history in its totality. But I think we should be teaching it to learn from history, not to manufacture divisions and create more of the racism that they say they're trying to dispel.
Well, actually, I don't think they even say that they're trying necessarily to dispel racism. I don't even think that was ever like a modus of teaching this theory. Like, when have you ever heard these people who talk about it for the most part come out and say, we just want to abolish racism? It usually doesn't happen. Like, I can't point to anyone. Can the Taliban join? Can we invite the Taliban onto our live stream?
Probably shouldn't be handing that out to people we don't know on someone else's live StreamYard.
I don't know. When we invited Peterson, it went really well.
Yeah, this is true,
saying.
but that was Peterson. I mean,
This could be Peterson's other account, for all we know.
For all we know,
I mean,
you can put him in the waiting room, get a feel for that situation.
Yeah. You don't have to put. I'm just saying, like, I don't know if I would hand out someone else's link. Is all I'm saying.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah. If it was ours, I would be all for it.
As a guest, not to sign into the account.
Yeah. Well, anyone who knows anything about technology knows that there's not really too much of a barrier between the two.
Well, I'm glad I don't know technology and I'm not up to anything nefarious, so we're good.
Just the Taliban, no biggies.
Yeah, no biggie.
Salam alaikum.
They just walk into places with open arms.
Yeah, mujahideen. Yeah, tolab. But
Well,
there,
this is very interesting how we go from Afghanistan to critical race theory. And honestly, guys, I think this dovetails nicely with what could possibly be the sunset of the West. I think a lot of people have said, and I don't actually believe it, but I think there's this idea I don't believe it, but there is an idea that the West is in decline.
Casey says, bring him on. Taliban, where do I send the link?
Oh, I mean, I think he's allowed to give us permission.
Yeah, I haven't smiled this hard all day. I'm doing it.
I think we're a very tribalized world, and I think Afghanistan has every right to be as tribal as they want. We don't have any right to go in there and dictate to them how they should do it. Now, if 20 years down the line there's this huge pushback, like the Afghan revolution is going on, and you have a distinct coalition going against the Taliban that is fighting for the rights of the people, a la the American Revolution and us, I don't mind being France in that situation. Right? I don't want to go into any country where I don't think the majority of people are going to be receptive of what we're bringing. It's a part of the tribalization. It's a part of it. CRT plays, like what CRT talks about plays into it, right? Like, people have their own perceptions of how these things go. People have their own realities, own cultures, own values. And if you try to force yours onto people, they don't get very receptive. What they're receptive to is having this freedom and having it yanked away by the Taliban. That's going to piss a lot of people off, particularly women. And you gotta believe most of the men in that country do, to an extent, actually love the women in their lives. They do truly love their sisters and their mothers and their daughters. And you got to think there's going to be a healthy amount of men in that country that are going to be just as pissed off for what the Taliban are doing to the women in their lives.
Yeah, but where were they?
That's exactly the problem. Where are they now?
Yeah, I think you're naturally creating a form of nihilism there. It's just going to be that despair, like why nobody wants to help us? We can't help ourselves.
They didn't think we were going to leave. They thought we would be there forever. And so these people didn't step up. They didn't join. The police force and the military are insanely corrupt. They're beyond corrupt. And so the good people aren't in these organizations. But the good people, I'm hoping, and this is the only reason I can even handle this world today, is having this kind of hope and having this kind of optimism, is that what will spring up from all of this is a legitimate desire within people in Afghanistan to fight for their rights, because freedom is not something that people are born with. Most of human history has not existed with this concept of individual freedoms and liberties. And so pretty much every country we go to where we're bringing it, this is a very new concept to a lot of these people, and it's
Kevin,
yeah, sorry.
That's actually untrue, because human history actually goes back 200,000 years, most of which was small bands of humans roving around as much land as they wanted in egalitarian societies. So freedom has existed.
Back when we had all of human interaction was just based off of voluntary, consensual relationships between people.
No, that's a real social dystopia.
Yeah.
Oh no! I'm just referring to societies.
Let's go back to our times before pre-humans.
Yeah. Oh, no. Right before cities, man, people were happy. They were egalitarian. You had your occasional tribal war every 2 or 3 days, but you got over that, and then you lived your life.
But once the state was established, it was established forever. And ever since the state has been established, individual freedom has not been a priority. The American government was basically the first attempt since the establishment of the state back in Sumeria. It was the first attempt at an actual people that specifically limited the extent to which their government could expand and valued individual liberties and freedoms. It was the first attempt ever. So it's, this idea that freedom is something that people will inherently understand. It's like once you have it, you understand it, you have a natural draw to it. But if you've never had it, you'll never understand what it actually is until it's gone. And so my only hope is that the loss of this freedom is what spurs 5, 10, 20 years from now, the revolution in Afghanistan to actually truly, at least in the urban areas, the metropolitan parts of Afghanistan, make it something of a free country.
Well, I help along with you.
Yeah, that's. I'm just here for the optimism, boys. That's all I care about is the optimism. Yeah, have you guys heard of the white pill versus the black? You've heard of the red pill versus the blue pill, right? Where the red pill is seeing reality and blue pill is continuing to see the life through the lens of the narrative they want. White pill and black pill is the next step. It's okay, now that you've taken the red pill, do you want to be optimistic and take the white pill, or do you want to be pessimistic and take the black pill? And so I've chosen to be white pilled, therefore I must inject the hopeful circumstances into everything. Otherwise nihilism's all that's left, and I don't want to be a nihilist. So
I thought the red pill was about getting girls.
No, that was the blue pill.
that was the red pilled incels, is what that was. Is like, back in the day.
Spend enough time on there, you won't be an incel anymore. Maybe.
Oh yeah, it'll teach you how to get all the latest.
I cannot find the Taliban page. I can find Taliban. I can find Taliban news.
It's got to be someone we know. It's got to be someone we know.
It's got to be, dude. There's no way it's not extremely successful, and I applaud their trolling. I mean, it's just perfect.
There's no way it's not someone we know. There's no way someone who has a troll Taliban account is going to come to our little live stream.
You'd be
or
surprised.
The actual Taliban.
Yeah.
Maybe they have a 50-cent army, just like the Chinese.
If only, dude. Speaking of the Chinese, because here's the thing, like, China's moving in Afghanistan. Do you know what else is going on in that region concerning China?
They're not moving in. They're not moving in. They just recognize them.
Yeah, no, obviously they recognize them, but they're going to be trying to move in. At the same time, you want to know what's going on China's their what is it? Their other southern border?
What, in Bhutan or something?
In India, because India, who has the population to and will surpass China here soon, is the biggest. They hate China with a passion. So, like, the only reason we're not directly allied with India is because we were directly allied with Pakistan purely for the fact that we didn't want them. They had nuclear weapons, and we didn't want them to become a terrorist state. So there's never been an official alliance with India because of that. But our alliance with India is built on what? Trade. We have a humongous trade relationship with India that has allowed us to actually remain their strongest ally in the region, while at the same time, officially our stance is in support of Pakistan, because if we were not supporting Pakistan, there's a good chance that they would have been an even bigger funder. All they did was house Osama bin Laden for years, right? That's, nothing too major. But it's not as if China's expansion isn't going to be met with significant resistance all across the regime. China's going to be moving into countries that have already fought wars of independence, and they're going to start trying to take over, and the people aren't going to be happy about it.
Dude, their army is not tried and tested one tiny little bit. Like the Chinese, they've never been in. The CCP fought 3 battles against the Japanese. 3.
Yeah.
Chiang Kai-shek's government fought like 1,000. They literally hid in the woods, like, we're going to wait. We're going to get these guys. Yeah, people think like, oh, yeah, they're so advanced. They're so ready. These dudes have never seen combat. Not a single one.
Not at all.
Not a single one of them.
The Indian army's seen a lot more because they've had legitimate conflicts with Pakistan in what is now Bangladesh, although the Bangladesh tensions are a little bit less. They've been having those for hundreds of years at this point. The Muslim versus Hindu conflict has been going on for years and years and years. And so it's not as if there is not another potential superpower in the region in India. And through very intelligent investment into the Indian subcontinent, we can very much create something that is equally as potentially not menacing, but like has the potential for dominance in the region economically that China has. And we can do it better, and we can create a better option that has better manufacturing. And if we turn our attention to turning India into what China is now without the communism, the economic potential is so much greater. But here's the thing, you don't need to fight China for that to happen. You just need to invest directly into India and helping them spread their reach out, because India's government is a lot more respectful of individual rights than China's is. Not to say that it's, great on that or even good, but it is significantly better.
A lot better. Yep.
So
Yep. I like the economic strategy. It's always going to be the economic strategy. And if we just slowly bleed them far enough, the only reason the CCP has power and legitimacy is because they allowed people to get rich. I mean, that's all people care about over there. But the moment the moment that starts looking bad, you're going to see some stuff, because Chinese people, they get pissed, man. I mean, there are protests. People don't seem to realize that China has protests all the time, and people get madder than shit. They get madder than we do. When they don't like something, they will go out there. They'll throw stuff at the cops, man. There was a bulldozer guy in China who was knocking down the buildings of the people who didn't pay him not so long ago. Like, they had to kill dozer guy too. I mean, these people don't screw around when they put their freaking minds to something. So the moment the CCP makes them poorer through their policies, they'll take care of it, right? East Asian nations can take care of themselves if we give them the tools and let them do it.
Michael Malice said it really well about why the North Korean government. By the way, if you want a really good insight in it, read his book Dear Reader, where he got a firsthand tour of the country of North Korea. And what he says, what one of the Korean refugees says in his book is that, you know, and I think what is her name? The Yeonmi Park.
Yeah,
She's the
Yeonmi Park, yeah.
She was. I think she's even reiterated this. Look, you can. The thing is that they'll tell you the economy is going great and doing wonderful, and they can tell you that all they want, even if your conditions never get better. The one thing they can't change is whether or not you have more food on the table this year than last year, and people notice that. And as soon as it starts getting smaller and smaller and smaller, that's when the revolutions happen. As long as your people are fed, chances are you're not going to face revolution. But as soon as food starts becoming an issue. And it will, because China does not have healthy water anywhere in that freaking country at all. They don't have, China is not set up to be for long-term success. They're set up for very surface level, basically PR success, if you will. They're going to be able to get these very surface level victories over America, but under the foundations that it's built on, you can see that rusty rebar. You can see it.
Obama was right, man. Paper tiger was honestly a good term. Like, I will give it to him on that. People don't understand. People are like, oh my God, they have the super fast train. Like, they're light years ahead of us. They're like $1 trillion in debt because of that, or something like that. They are so far in debt on all these infrastructure projects. And it's just inflating and inflating and inflating. And the bubble's getting bigger and the bubble's getting bigger and the bubble's getting bigger.
They build empty cities for millions of people. They just build cities for millions of people because they need to create jobs, but nothing's going into it. There's no product being put there. There's nothing being produced. It is all production for production's sake, and that is so not sustainable. It's stupid. Plus, in their efforts to build, they don't have the level of safety precautions that we do, because all they care about is what it looks like. It looks great when you're building all these wonderful, tall, huge buildings, and then you can just hide the fact that they keep collapsing, right?
I lived in one, Kevin. I freaking lived in one. It was brand new.
So ready to get Eric in here?
Okay, you guys, Eric is going to replace me, because
I've tried to find the Taliban and bring the Taliban on, but I can't find their account, so I don't know where to send the link.
Good. I'd rather not have the Taliban. But Eric can replace me, because, guys, if you didn't know, I'm moving to China like tomorrow. And Dylan, I'm going to hit you up later for that ride to the airport thing, okay? And I'm glad I can make it, guys, but I got to go pack my stuff.
We're going to miss you.
And,
later, man. Enjoy
Stay
China.
safe. Stay safe, Cole. We love you. We're going to miss you.
Thanks, guys. Dylan, I'll probably see you tomorrow.
We're not going to judge you if you flip your stance while you're over there.
Yo, guys, I'm gonna be singing the Chinese anthem. I'm gonna be behind the flag's gonna be behind me. It's gonna be great.
Long live Mao Zedong. He is so great.
It's pretty much something like that. I'll sing it for you guys once I'm there in Chinese, I promise. So look forward to that, guys.
The compliance report was founded on strategies to engage in maximum obedience.
Y'all. There you go. We love you, Cole.
The obedience revolt.
Stay safe.
All right, guys. I'll talk to you later.
Now that fucker's gone. Hope he disappears within the first week.
What a fucking idiot, dude. How embarrassing was that? In his room. Jeez. I can't believe we just put up with his strobe light ceiling fan this whole time.
No, I'm hoping that nothing happens to him while he's over there, because he has said some not nice things about China. So we all know that.
No, he hasn't. That's never happened.
Never. We all know that China, like any strong, secure alpha male, responds to slights about their manhood with violence and hatred rather than, because they're strong, they can handle criticism, right?
Of course.
Yeah, this is the thing, is that like if we don't take measures now to in the direction of a country that's sustainable as far as like our culture and our values on the global community, then we're always going to have these threats. So we have to identify what is it that constantly brings us into these wars, what is it that constantly gets us involved in these conflicts, and what can we do to stop that? And over and over and over again, outside of World War II, I would have been the first in line to volunteer for that thing, right? But there's a lot of other wars where it's just like these are battles that have to be fought by the people over there. There's always going to be conflicts. There's
Are you
always
telling
going to
me
be
Eric
turmoil.
Peterson is seriously not on my friends list?
Ha! You hate him. Eric, he hates you. It's okay. But yeah, so we just keep coming back to it because it's like the big one. I'm going to be talking about this a lot tomorrow too on the Be the Change. But it's just rough because I know the biggest problem right now is that a lot of my brothers and sisters from the military are going through a lot because it seems like it was all for nothing, and I just want everyone to know that there was a purpose behind it. You planted those seeds. It's on the Afghan people now to actually bring it to flourishment. And so
it's true. It's absolutely because Eric is white. I don't accept friend requests from white people after I read Robin DiAngelo's book.
Yep, exactly. That shit's crazy. That shit is crazy. But there was something else. I'm gonna look it up. Give me a second here. Keep going on your own.
Gosh, what is there to say? I've dedicated my life to creating babies of color and ending my own white bloodstream.
Asian isn't a person of color anymore because they're too successful.
It's not?
No, they're too successful. So they're no longer people of
wife.
color.
Wow.
It's really funny because they'll talk about how America oppresses all minorities, and it's like, what about Asians and Jews? Oh, yeah, they're oppressed. I was like, really? Because they're the highest earners by capita in our entire country by a lot. It's really not close. But, that's what CRT is. The narrative,
successful, man.
The narrative, even if untrue, must be held at all times. I want to do my usual pick a headline from the Huffington Post from today. Their top headline is that Biden's, standing behind his exit, and it's like, well, at this point, you kind of have to.
Yeah, you can't.
Hang on, guys. I changed my mind. Hey, hold up. That was Trump's bad idea. I have another one.
Dude.
The irony there is he did say that, almost 3 years ago? That he was going to pull the U.S. troops out completely.
Well, the leader of the Taliban right now, their number one spokesperson, was released from prison by Trump.
They immediately got on YouTube and started following the Liberty Revolt like any sound-minded person should do.
Yeah, people. By the way, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. It helps us get hit that thumbs up. It helps us get some kind of allows us to actually put into it gives us a bump in the algorithm, gives us a little bit more traction, a little bit more attention. So
I'll make sure I do that.
Appreciate y'all. But yeah, so I was thinking about it because I'm actually noticing that the NFL. So we had all the issues last year with ratings drops across all the leagues, right? The NFL seems to be rebounding really well because they seem to have really told the players, hey, shut the fuck up or your paychecks are going to start seeing the pain here, guys. They started showing like the NFL Players Association. So this is what your protests are doing to your paychecks. And they were like, oh, yeah, no more of this shit, guys. The money, the thing we actually care about is starting to get affected. So time to shut up. Like I'm actually going to be watching football this year. Do you watch football, Siri?
Yeah, my team is the Steelers.
Oh.
Undefeated so far.
How long that'll last with Big Rape Ben is going to be interesting. But
we'll see.
My God.
Yes,
we lost Dylan. This is going to be the show just got way better. Don't worry. But have you noticed that as well? When was the last time really that you heard like some kind of racial social justice news coming from the NFL?
Quite a bit actually. I think that it depends on how you follow your team.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I follow the Steelers on Instagram. One of my buddies is a coach for
Gotcha.
so I got him following me on TikTok, so I got a little platform there.
Nice.
And surprisingly, it hasn't changed at all. I think that instead of it being on CNN and Fox and all the big network channels, MSNBC and stuff, that's why you don't see it. But it's on the social media platform for sure.
Which is fine. If a player wants to do it on their individual social media platform, that's fine. But we've come a long way from the NFL actively going out to either not show the national anthem or actively going out to profess, basically the NBA and the NFL were campaigning for the Democratic Party throughout the election season last year by doing everything they could to set up election sites, giving every kind of social justice message airtime whenever they wanted it. That last one, I'm going to be interested to see how much of that we get. But I think that there is a deliberate attempt by the NFL right now to at least make sure that the social justice stuff is staying off the main page, because it's really driving people away from watching sports. It's really causing a lot of problems. And so I think it's just, I think the NFL is doing a good job. But you said your friend was a coach. Is he like a positions coach? Is he more of a more generalized?
Unfortunately for him, he's the summertime coordinator.
Gotcha.
So he does all summer scrims, fitness training, that kind of stuff. So.
Well, hey, he's still involved in the NFL. It's still got to be a pretty awesome gig to have, just even if it's for a little bit.
I mean, I trade occupations.
You'd be hard pressed to convince me not to either. Like, seriously,
I wouldn't mind being thrown into that 1% of whatever.
Oh my gosh, and you gotta think they're. Oh, that's actually a good question. So, how do you feel about that's something we haven't even touched on, is the refugee situation. How do you feel about the refugee situation coming from Afghanistan right now?
I personally, it's the same as when we kind of went in 2000. I think it's extremely scary.
Yep.
We have no way to police any action. We have no idea who they are. We have no way to vet who they are. We have there's just nothing. And then the allies that we had there who were essentially embedded into every network channel that there was to identify who these people are completely gone. So I think it's scary.
Yeah. I mean, for one, there was a lot of people that sacrificed a lot to help us out in our initial, especially in the last 20 years, translators and a lot of other stuff, who were doing it with the knowledge or the belief that America was going to help them out on the other side. Like, look, you're putting your life in danger by helping the Americans. And now, we left without even bringing these people with us. There's a lot of Afghans that we owe a spot in our country because they put their lives on the line for our country, for our countrymen. And I think that's how you earn a position. So I think that. I
don't think you cannot let them in. Yeah, I don't think that's even a thing. Like you're kind of stuck. But I think it's 30,000 whatever at our military bases is what they're talking about bringing them to, and they're going to be on military bases, which okay, the security is there. But I think that's part of the reason why I see the things the way I do, and that's the only reason why I think that we should have a military presence there. And I think it's because of that investment. And I agree with what you said in the past about it.
Yeah. But, and I'm taking a more radical approach to it. Obviously, I have a different way of looking at it, and so your way has a lot more sway and a lot more validity when it comes to the mind of the American people. So, it does have to be acknowledged that if most people feel that this is something they do, and a lot of people volunteer to go do this stuff, like, hey, there's a little bit to be said for the fact that. Obviously, there's a lot of disagreement, and if people want to go fight, they should be able to. I do want to say that I'm thinking about it, and there is a big problem though if we start taking all the men away from Afghanistan. If we take all the potential people who are going to fight for Afghanistan, I think what are you going to have left? Yeah, exactly. I think we should be taking as many women and children as we can, at least their families. But we got to start telling the men, look, guys. This is your country. You got to fight for it. Okay. Like, at some point, you know, it's got to be not the American people fighting for it. It's like the same thing I said about Syria. Every woman and child that wants to come over here, let them. But the men do need to go back and fight for their country. That's part of what being a man is being the protector and fighting for your community, for your family. There's a reason why that role exists, because danger is always ever present, and there needs to be people that are able to step in and protect those who can't really protect themselves, in this case women and children. So I do think that there should be some consideration for the fact that, you know, we got to start telling these men, hey, look, you got to go find yourself a gun, which shouldn't be too hard considering Afghanistan is one of the most armed countries in the world. And you got to fight for yourself, because at the end of the day, like, America's presence isn't going to change anything if, no matter when we leave, as soon as we leave, this is going to happen. There's always going to be this attempt to take back what control we're leaving. Anytime we leave, there's going to be a power vacuum. And if we can't,
our friend Eric is on the phone with his friends,
yeah,
the
so you can pull
Taliban.
Yeah. But yeah, it's you know, there's something to be said for the fact that, you know, we should, a part of what we're doing is what we should be doing if we're going to instill our cultural values, is instill the cultural value of fighting to the death for what you love. So, what are you looking up there, Dylan? You've been like staring intently
I've
at your
been
screen.
searching for this Taliban page the whole time, man. Desperately.
It was created on the spot, dude. It's using the Taliban flag. Hi,
What's up,
Eric.
guys? Sup, team? How are we this evening?
I'm doing a lot better. Dylan can attest to the fact that I was a little bit depressed when we first started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he heard my opinion and he got all riled up.
You got the
Well, I
like I-
jumped
And
in
now
and
he's looking at him. Now
give
he's
me the 2-minute
smiling.
condensed version. Where are we at right now?
Well, I'm
we're all over
I'm
the
about
place.
to check out of here. I want to spend some time with my daughter.
Well, if that's good, remember, none of us have control over this. So
yeah, I was
when you
going
leave, we
to
leave.
I was going to continue listening, and when you guys are ready to check out, I'll check
Yeah,
out.
okay.
I'll trust me. I'm going to be monitoring the
Okay.
conversation closely.
As long as you'll be in the background, we're good. Eric, what is your opinion on the situation in Trashcanistan, as we lovingly called it?
So I'm absolutely disgusted with the lack of leadership to facilitate a clean, quick, and
Yes,
effective
that is something
withdrawal.
we haven't touched on enough either.
I think this was the right decision in the sense that we need to get out of wars that we have no business fighting in the first place. So I am happy that the decision has been made and we are actively getting out of Afghanistan. We need to do this in other countries as well. However, this is the same level of fumble, and the Saigon thing has already been floated by a bazillion different people. But to understand this in true reality, people who have been born and grown up under essentially American Western ideals are now being thrust into a world that probably a lot of them have never known. It's probably been their most closest relative, probably a mother or father or grandparent at this point that has. And so while I'm very pleased with the decision to leave, which is absolutely a necessary step to getting back on track with our military industrial complex, where we don't have consensus is that this was, by all accounts, they absolutely ignored every media and intelligence report that had been done in the last 6 months.
Let me pause you right there. The intelligence reports suggested that it would be 30 to 90 days before the Taliban could even attempt to muster. So, what's broken about that too?
I think that was their publicly faced message. I've been doing a bunch of research today to try and understand where's the disconnect? Was it between high-level sergeants and ranking members, or was this strictly the suits versus the boots? And the impression that I'm getting at this point is this was suits, no boots. The boots have been telling them on the ground, there is not 300,000 people that are willing, ready, and able to fight. And that's the number that they floated, that the Afghan troops were going to be arriving, showing up as, and ultimately able to control.
It didn't manifest.
And immediately, the moment that we said we're going to leave, you had 300,000 people who said, this isn't a fight I actually want because my president just got on an airplane and left the country. And so this is not worth fighting for. And my concern at this point is that I think people have lost sight of what the next full circle argument is going to be, which is, why did the U.S. leave without a strategic plan in place for us to be here, knowing that the Taliban, who's going to punish us, that we worked with these people. There's 88,000 people. We have made this is a blood agreement. There is no other way to shake that out. We have shook their hands over blood and said, we will take care of you, whether that's a visa to another country, a visa to the U.S., or an opportunity somewhere outside of this hellhole that you have given us a good fight in. We will provide for you and your family. Now there are 88,000 people that are stuck in that country with no access to getting out, that are trying desperately. When you see people getting on that C-17 to fly out of the country,
oh my God, yeah,
those are not people who want to be in that country. These are not people who are trying to take advantage of us. They are desperate to the point where they will jump on a flying airplane to take the chance that they might fall down in another country. Like, literally, that's the chance that they were taking. That's how desperate they are.
Yeah.
So I see this.
Heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking. Women, children are absolutely being cast into the Stone Age. Literally, they will stone people to death. I'm saying that within 2 weeks, there will probably be public executions. And it would not surprise me one bit to see, and you already have it. This is just a precursor. This was a test of wills. And unfortunately, we were beat the shit out of over this. I apologize, my friends, for the.
Yeah, I want to say that there is something to consider here, right? So the problem is that Taliban is very aware of how much of a PR fucking nightmare this is.
Yes,
they are. They know full well if they start going full Taliban, we're coming back.
They also know that they have the support of foreign governments now who are adversaries of ours.
Long as they don't return to what the Taliban is of old.
Correct. Correct. Now, I will make this point, which is, look, I'm not so sure. Like, this is obviously a huge humanitarian disaster. There is no polite way to say this. We took something that was already not good and
made it worse.
Made it as bad as you can execute a plan. That is what we have effectively done. There are about 2,800 civilians, is my understanding, of the United States who are still stuck in Afghanistan.
I think they're pretty much all evacuated. Most of the people that were left behind were contractors that were of the mercenary sort, not the other sort.
But we don't know. And you're
100% right.
My only point in saying that is, like, the last Wheels Up flight that we had out was that C-17. So when I make this argument, just hear me. I got you. It's a parallel argument of, we lost about 2,800 people when the towers came down on 9/11. Yep. If we lose 2,800 civilians in Afghanistan because we failed to appropriately put a plan in place to evacuate them prior to the military leaving, we have effectively killed the same amount of people. So where are we at as a culture to fight back against our own government, who has now done a terrorist act?
Yeah,
that is in effect the same thing.
Yeah. So myself as the resident ANCAP, right? I think all foreign wars are basically wrong outside of, I disagree with a lot of ANCAPs when I say that just because the people in the suit wanted to fight the World War II for whatever, racial purposes, whatever their reasoning for. A lot of men volunteered for different reasons. There millions of men volunteered for an entirely different reason, and that should not be discounted. The thing is that as an ANCAP, the reason I hate these wars is because I know how terrible and awful they are. Your solution to that should not be an option that makes things worse. And I think that if the way this should have been done, because I think the problem is they legitimately didn't think it was going to fall this quickly. And so when they left people behind in the embassy, they legitimately thought that they were going to have months to get some kind of gauge on the situation, not hours, not days. And it's a complete and utter failure of the leadership in this administration to do anything close to what should have been done as far as the withdrawal goes. And it just feeds more into the realization that these wars are just bad. You can't even pull out of a war correctly anymore.
And so there's a couple of comments here that I want to touch base with you guys, particularly the YouTube crew. So what are my thoughts on bringing Afghan refugees? I think we owe it to them. We made a promise packed in blood. You can't deny these people their freedom that we've offered and garnered to them, saying we will take care of you. I think in fact, if we're being true to nature and saying, let's look at history in a very objective way, this is the reason why we never were able to, as a society, swallow Vietnam. Is because the same shit happened there as what's happening in Kabul today, where we made promises to people. People who came back screwed up from Vietnam came screwed up for a varied number of reasons. But one of the collective reasons was because these people looked people dead in their eyes and said to them, if you do this, we will make sure that you are taken care of for life. And we did not complete the mission.
Nope.
So soldiers came home to a hostile environment. They came home with an unaccomplished mission, and they did it on the backs of hundreds of thousands of dead people.
Yep.
Okay. So I just want to make it clear. My stance on bringing over the Afghan refugees is circumstantial based on their role in our endeavors. If they didn't fight in our endeavors, then they have a whole other issue that they need to deal with. We don't need to take in Afghan refugees above and beyond what we've made a contractual obligation to do. And I think we owe it to them. But the other people need to fight this fight on their own. They do.
It's that last part. That's what it comes down to.
So the question of should we stay? Do you think we should still be present? And the fact is that we need to go in and we need to do a targeted strike to make sure whatever the hell we left behind is not usable for them in the future. That was a mistake we've made once. We don't want to make it again.
That's what I'm saying. What should have happened is the month preceding our withdrawal should have been the worst month the Taliban have ever had ever. All effort should have been made to completely airstrikes 24/7 on every single strategic location, so that when we're pulling out, they are in complete and utter disarray. Assassinate every single leader whose location which probably we know quite a few. Just do everything you can to leave them in such utter disarray that when you leave, there's at least some level of respite before the shit hits the fan and people can collect themselves and get used to it.
The saddest thing to me is that this, again, completely avoidable in at least the disaster that is this process of pulling out.
Yep.
This country was going to collapse one way or the other. So I don't want anybody to get it twisted about my thoughts on where Afghanistan actually stood with us pulling out. They were either going to stand up and fight on their own 2 feet, or they're going to do what they're doing currently, which is they are going to surrender to the Taliban and turn over their weapons and information to them in hopes that buys them another day. That's the world they live in, guys. We don't know these problems because we live in a different society with a different culture.
Different. Yep.
So disagreeing with leaving, that's your prerogative, but you got to understand the reason we went there was on false pretenses to begin with. And then we did a tremendous mission creep into, we think it's still worth it to be here in Afghanistan to liberate and give freedoms to people who, by the way, did not ask for them.
Nope.
Now,
That's the
we
problem.
can argue that in the 20 years of occupation that people have grown accustomed to Western lifestyle and they do not want to go back to Sharia law, which means that there's an ideology that can play out. This is why I say they need to defend themselves, because their ideology needs to take root.
Yeah, that's my whole point. They were never going to fight for it until they lost it. It was always going to be a situation when we pulled out. Immediately, what was going to happen is that they were going to lose it because they aren't going to understand just what you have to do in order to maintain individual freedom in a country. And so, what like I've been saying is, like, hopefully what this has done is so many people have been raised in this that within, it's not going to be immediate. It's going to take time. Resistance efforts take time. These are not immediate things, but the resistance is going to grow because
my tremendous fear. Sorry, Kevin, I don't mean to cut you.
No, you're good. You're good.
My tremendous fear coming out of this is actually that group of people that you're talking about, the 20-year-old who exists today in Afghanistan, who did not grow up at the point of immediate conflict, who grew up in a relatively safe environment by comparison to the previous standard, but all they've ever known is conflict. Okay. So let's take a snapshot of a 20-year-old and let's put them in the context of individuals, not as a collective, but as an individual. Okay. The United States has been in your country the entire duration of your life at this point.
Yep.
Right. You look at them and you say that these are strong leaders. They don't make bad decisions because your life has improved significantly from the day you were born to today. My concern is that the idea was probably to give some sort of inception to the ideology of the West, but I think this totally backfires because of the way we exited. So now all of these people who said we can count on the United States to fulfill their obligations, we can count on them for resources and materials and information that will help us push our cause forward. They've abandoned us. And I would say you're going to have a hard time because the Taliban, whether people want to recognize this or not, are good to the people who are compliant to them. They give them food, they give them refuge, they give them money, they make sure that their lives are taken care of. Like, I'm not saying it's a good humanitarian situation. I'm just saying that
they know how to play the role of state actor.
Yeah, like, you kind of have two options. You can get in line with the ideology, or you can find yourself in gallows in the street square. Like, that's your options under Sharia law. So in the face of everything that's happening right now, you have an entire generation who can't piece together the before and the after. All they know is the present. They're going to look at us and the way we just exited their country, and they're going to never understand why we would do something like this to them. And quite frankly, I can't make any sense out of it. The only way I can make sense out of it is if this is a provocation. One of two things has happened here. Either the gross incompetence of our suits in the military has led a president to make the most serious folly and fumble that we have ever made as a country right in the public eye, while we have current adversaries coming after our ass.
Yep. Or
there was something to this that is a little bit more, and we'll just call it deep state stuff. Okay.
Let me rattle off something for you. So what is so clearly to me going on here that I hope isn't going on is that people have been calling for so long to end this war in Afghanistan that it just makes perfect sense to withdraw so horribly that the only response is to go back in. And then once you go back in, man, that shit is indefinite.
So I mean, yes, I think that's an interesting point of view. It may very well. I mean, we've already committed about 8,000 troops to going back in an immediate fashion. So yeah, you're right. I think in the interim, that's true. I'm looking at this from like a much bigger world picture, and I'm saying, okay, like if China's already come out and said we will recognize the Taliban, they've had discussions with them as being the recognized form of government, guys. I'm not saying this is a conspiracy theory because it's not. They threatened Taiwan this morning, and their evidence for how Taiwan would fall is
based on what we just did.
Is the videos and pictures we're seeing come out of Afghanistan today.
Yep.
To me, look, We've got people with hands in their cookie jars. I don't know what it means. I can't tell you for sure. But I can give you a rough idea. If your hand is in the other country's cookie jar, you're paying for it, or they're paying you for it, potentially.
Yep.
No cookies are for free, okay?
Yeah.
Nobody gets the cookie for free. So, look, I'm gonna shoot way off the deep end. You can reel me in for how crazy I get here, which is China's on the move, Biden's on the payroll. They've threatened Taiwan with the same exact destruction that Afghanistan is seeing right now, saying essentially your U.S. allies won't show up. We are being bullied, and we are being bullied by people who have bought our politicians.
Yep.
I don't think that's a stretch to some degree, because we need evidence of this. We need to have some articulated, specific things.
Imagine if the president's son was on the board of like Chinese corporations.
So that's the reason I bring it up, is because they have already bought and paid for the Bidens. Whether we want to talk about this or not,
they have.
Our politicians are bought, and it's not the right or the left. It's all of them.
Yep.
It's literally like, what's hard right now, okay, is we don't live in a country that does due process well right now.
Nope.
We were pretty good about that, generally speaking, up and until these last 18 months, and then it seems to have gone out the window. We don't do due process anymore.
Not in the slightest.
My concern is that because we don't do due process anymore, there will never be justice for what's come. And now I'm going to throw some criticism back on Trump, which is he could have done this before he left.
Yep.
He chose to make March. This was an intentional move on his mark to say, if I don't get elected, things can go bad really quickly. And if I'm not there to pick up the pieces, it will go bad quickly. This is always going to be my gripe with Trump is, look, guys, he is not your God. He is not your savior. He didn't come here to rescue you. He came here as a business person. He took some good shots. I think we can all agree from a presidential standpoint, he did a lot of good. He also ushered in the 15 days of lockdown that has lasted 18 months.
Yep.
He also is the person who is taking a financial stake in vaccines that we can now basically say across the board, like, it's either not working the way they wanted it to, or it might not be working at all. But the truth is that it is nowhere near what they told us it was. So look, things change, and I get that the evolution of certain understandings of metrics can change significantly based on every day's new information. But it is ridiculous to think that there is not some level of complacency or maybe even complicity from one administration to the next. Now, it could have just simply been, hey, we didn't care to inform you about how terrible the situation is. That's as innocent as it could be. Or this could be a legitimate, we put you in a position where you said you want to make good on the same promise as we do. We put you in a no-win situation because the deal that we negotiated is one you never intended to make good on anyways. This is the result of not having a plan, more so than it's the result, in my opinion, of having a specified plan to fail.
Yeah. Quick question. Since Trump was already planning this, where was this going to be the plan that Trump was going to use? What happened to Trump's plan for withdrawal?
That's where I think that this is where I will give Trump some credit. Is there was a plan that had some specific contingencies. It was basically, if you fuck with us at any point during this process of getting out,
we're coming back.
We will come back strong. So
yeah,
and it kept them at bay.
But they know now that Biden is not going to have that reaction, because if Trump were president right now, for all his flaws, this would not be flying. I guarantee you, if Trump were president and this was going down, we'd be seeing 30,000 troops getting ready to go over to Afghanistan to. Not to mention
the impeachment call. Like guys, look, really, we have to take a step back right now and realize whether we liked Trump or not, it doesn't really matter anymore. Biden is our current president.
Yep.
We can talk all the things that Trump did good. One of the things he did terribly was communicate up front when he knew he was losing office to make sure that our country was secure.
Yeah, all he cared about was that he lost. Yeah, all he cared about was that he lost.
Yeah, part of the border issue is his fault.
Yeah.
He made a stink about leaving office.
Still
that
is.
reached the rest of the world. So whether he invited them or not, people got the impression that this dude's losing, and he's been the one that's tough on this policy. It's open. Biden didn't even have to say it. So he's not an innocent person. I'm just going to point that out. I think he was a great president, and I think he had a lot more on his plate that he wanted to do, and maybe had very good intentions in doing so. But he is a fucking sore loser, to say the least. And it does not help. This does not help people in our country disseminate who's really at the helm of this issue, and therefore hold them accountable. We are having an incredibly tough time even just distinguishing at this point whether or not Kamala is going to pull a 25th Amendment issue on this guy, or whether there's going to be some impeachment jargon. But we're at an inflection point right now where we get to look back at 1975 and we get to say, holy shit, we already saw what happens when we allow a country to fall to a communist regime.
This is getting very interesting as far as the 25th Amendment stuff, because this is just another drop in the Biden administration fuck up bucket. But I would like to talk to you more about that on one of my shows during the week. Absolutely. And we can get in contact about that.
Let's do it.
Because I think we've been going for almost 2 hours here, and I'm personally running out of a little juice at this point. I think
I just wanted to jump on because I know, you guys were in, and I wanted to just jump on for a quick second because
we love your thoughts.
And my whole view on this is worldview, guys. So if we're not looking at the whole picture, that's an intentional direction shoot for you to be down. So if it's not the border, if it's not COVID, and it's not the Taliban, where is the boogeyman? So we got to find him, and we got to sniff him out, and then be done with it.
Perfect. Is there anything else you want to say before we head out here, Eric?
Appreciate Liberty Revolt. Appreciate what you guys are doing. I think are you joining us tomorrow for Truth Will Set You Free on Be the Truth? So we'll see you there. But you guys got to keep bringing your heat because you've got it. We'll try and pump your numbers up a little bit.
Appreciate you, brother. Appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Well, Bucky, feel like this is a good place to end. Feel like it's been a great show. You think we should get a quick plug of Liberty Organics in there really quick? The best CBD you'll ever have. They'll make you
Ladies
CBD.
and gentlemen, we're about to sign out. But first, Liberty Organics CBD. Get you some if you're in Colorado, and I can meet you in person, because at this point we haven't figured out all of the logistics as far as
we're still working on the online
There's
store.
a bunch of problems, because not only is it heavily regulated and you need a license to sell it, it's illegal in a big number of zip codes around the country. And not only can we not sell to those zip codes, but we cannot ship through those zip codes either. So this introduces a big problem with trying to put this on our online store. And this is something that I've been trying to accomplish for some time. How do I try to monetize the Liberty Revolt? By selling the most heavily regulated substances I could possibly get my hands on.
That's our starting point. The shirts and the hats are going to come easy once we figure out the CBD game, which those are also on the way at some point too.
Yes, they are. I had to change shops. I found out that the shop I was working with can only do one color on a t-shirt at a time. And if you try to do multiple colors, they need multiple prints, and they're like weeks and weeks out at that. So I found another shop, and I've started communication with them. Perfect. But dang, man, there's so much work to do.
I'll help you with the CBD. I got some friends, in some places that are really high all the time. So we might be able to help you out with the logistics.
Sounds great, man. Shoot them my way. Cole was going to hop on that, but I got one preliminary report where he said, it looks like it's illegal in some places, and then he never said anything after that.
I should probably be the one looking into that. That's my bad. I need to be looking in on the legal side of things, But
all right, sounds good, guys. We love you.
Thank you guys so much for joining. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Help us get a bump up if you like what we're saying. Pay attention to our Facebook page. We'll be announcing our appearances on other shows from there as well. If you want to catch all the Liberty Revolt content, watch for Be the Changes page. Watch for whatever other pages decide to pick us up. So we appreciate your support.
And remember, it's not your ideas that are bad. It's
It's
you.
you.